So welcome to all the members, the staff, the audience, both live here with us and on WebEx. Thank you for your attention and concern about these important issues. I'm pleased to say that we are constituted as we were last session, which allows for greater continuity. And I was pleased with the way the committee worked. So I'm pleased to see everybody's back. We have a few absent, but I think they're actually with us in the building, just perhaps absent temporarily. Why don't we start with everybody, for the sake of order, just who's here, starting with Representative Butler. Introduce yourself briefly, and so that the audience who may not have been here last year knows where you're from and what the district is that you represent. Thank you.
So I'm Nate Butler, the 68th district, which is out in Junction City, Morris County, Council Grove, a little bit of Manhattan, and all of Fort Riley. This is my 4th year on the committee.
Angela Martinez, Wichita, Kansas, Representative District 103, and this is my 3rd year on the committee. Oh no, 4th year, I'm sorry.
Representative Lance Neely, 42nd District. This is my 2nd year on the committee.
Hello, my name is John Carmichael. I'm the state representative from the 92nd District, and this is either my 8th or 10th year on the committee. I can't remember.
Representative Tobias Schlingenziepen, District 55 here in Topeka. This is my 4th year. I'm starting now, and it's good to be here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
John Resman, I represent the 121st District, which is the west side of Olathe and parts of DeSoto, and this is my 8th year.
I'm Representative Brooklyn Mosley. I represent the best district, District 46 out of Northeast Lawrence.
Representative James, I represent Southeast Kansas District 4, Lynn and Bourbon County.
You know, he's too kind. He's a first sergeant in the Marine Corps. That's as high as you can get. He's too kind. Chuck Smith, District 3, which is pretty much the real Pittsburgh. I'm a retired math school teacher, and this is my 8th year, so thank you.
Coach.
Brad Barrett, state rep for the 76th House District. That's all of Coffee, bottom half of Osage, Raleigh, side of Lion, 2nd year.
Thank you very much. My name is Bob Lewis, and I chair the committee. I'm from Garden City, 123rd District, and when Representative Schwetzfager and Seiwert arrive, whether that's today or tomorrow, we'll have them make their introductions. Also, I believe everybody on staff, except perhaps the broadcast fellow, was with us last year, but so why don't we start with the new fellow, if you could, and then the rest of you will introduce yourselves as well.
Hello, my name is Devin Barger, and I'll be your broadcast tech for this session.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
And I will be the committee assistant for this session.
Jordan Milholm with Legislative Research. It's my 10th session, but I think it's at least my 7th staffing this committee.
Hi, I'm Jillian Kincaid with Legislative Research. This is my 4th session and my 4th session staffing this committee.
Natalie Scott with the Office of Revisor of Statutes. This is my 14th session. I think it's my 13th session staffing this committee.
And Jason Thompson, Revisor of Statutes Office. Session number 20, I have no idea how many on this committee. Most of those.
So from all the introductions, it's clear that we have a lot of history on the committee, which is good, because it gives us perspective on what we're trying to do, and I'm always keen on knowing where we've come from. So thank you especially to Representative Carmichael and the several staff members who have been with us for quite some time. We'll call on your expertise and appreciate that. Let's see. Are there any requests for the committee to sponsor bills? Either committee members or anybody in the audience? Seeing none, we will move on to our agenda, which, well, before we get to that, I think I'll just sort of tell you that right now I don't anticipate meeting tomorrow or Friday. I don't know how that would change. I can't imagine, but so we'll be off. We still don't, I'm still trying to decide which bills we're going to be dealing with. We haven't got referrals yet. One issue, though, that we will be taking up is the need for a new prison in Hutchinson. I suspect most of everybody on the committee is aware of that issue. It's a big ticket item. I've heard that it's a $500 million project, and that was several years ago. And it may be more now. So we're going to have, I believe we're going to have a joint hearing on that topic, maybe not next week, but the following. And we're going to do that hearing with the Social Services and Public Safety Budget Committee and the Building Construction Committee, because we're all interested in some fashion in that issue. And I won't prejudge it other than to say that it's an issue that needs to be discussed, and obviously it's an important one for not only the committee but for the state and the legislature at whole. Yes, Representative Smith.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Is that a juvenile prison?
No, it's a adult facility. It's, yeah, it has several other things too, but it has maximum as well, I believe.
Thank you.
Yes, Representative.
It is sometimes confusing, though, because at one time it was known as the Kansas State Industrial Reformatory, and that's where they put the youngest people who had reached majority, but that has now been 30, 40 years ago. But for me, I still think of it the same way.
Yes, yes, Representative Neely.
I worked there for over a decade, so I'm very familiar and everything with that facility.
And that's all. That's why we're very happy to have you on the committee, because you'll bring a lot to a lot of information that we need to know. That facility was, although it's been expanded over the years, was initially put up in the 19th, not the 20th, but the 19th century. Okay, so that's just a preview of some of the work that we're going to be doing. But right now, I'd like our staff assistant from research, Jillian Kincaid, to give us a report on the J. Russell Jennings Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice Oversight. We met this summer, and this is a report on what happened in that meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. A digital copy of the report should have just hit your inboxes if you wish to follow along. It is also available on the S Drive. And then it is not there yet, but the publication should be available on the KLRD website, klrd.gov. I think on Friday is when our first summary of, our interim committee reports to the 26th legislature will be published. So the report of the J. Russell Russ Jennings Joint Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice Oversight to the 2026 Kansas Legislature. This is a statutory joint committee that is charged with oversight of the Department of Corrections, both its work for adult offenders and juvenile offenders, oversight on the activities, plans regarding implementation and expansion of projects, operation of all of their services and programs. This committee is also charged with oversight of adult correctional programs, activities, and facilities of counties, cities, and other local governmental entities, and juvenile programs of the same counties, cities, and other local governmental entities. And then overseeing the work of the Juvenile Justice Oversight Committee, which is a separate committee with a very similar name, but separate, as well as implementation of juvenile justice reform. So the committee met for 2 days this interim on November 6th and 7th. They started their work with a presentation on community corrections from the president of the Kansas Community Corrections Association. He provided an overview of community corrections programs and explained that community corrections is a cost avoidance measure for the state, that for every however many dollars the state spends on community corrections and field supervision, they are saving money by not incarcerating that individual. And in response to questions from the committee, the president shared that the most recent statewide success data that KCCA has, the Community Corrections Association, is from fiscal year 21. And that is because there was a shift in how the data system was maintained. They shifted to a new system, and so they don't have any more recent data than that. And that they're defining success as whether or not an individual goes to prison when they are on supervision. It's very black and white. If the person goes to prison, it is not successful. If the person does not go to prison, it is successful. That's it. There was further discussion in the question portion regarding a new grant funding formula. The president expressed that it would be most helpful to know if there are going to be any significant changes to how grants are disseminated to the community corrections programs, if they're known in advance for planning purposes. Most of the community corrections programs are funded by grants from the Department of Corrections, and so simply so that they can know what they're doing, it would be helpful to know what that's going to be. This grant formula had been reviewed over 2025, and they we're working on implementing that new formula, but the brakes were pumped, and the Department of Corrections did decide to have a third party come in, and they are going to review the formula and have them take a look at all of the pieces of it and take a look at what the farther reaching ramifications could be. The Department of Corrections discussed that, but to not mention it now without that context, that just helps fill in why the president was bringing that up and what he meant by it would be helpful to know what those changes would be. Further, there was conversation about House Bill 2329, which you may recall this committee passed out last year, and the Community Corrections Association regarding the portion of juveniles committing offenses with a firearm. Their stance as an association is they want the people with the most information about the case making the decisions about the juvenile sentence. Next, the committee heard a presentation from the Kansas Juvenile Justice Oversight Committee. This is the other committee with a similar name. The chairperson presented on the Juvenile Justice Oversight Committee their key achievements in 2025, the status of their response to a post-audit that they received in 2020, and a variety of the metrics that they used to determine the success of juvenile programming. The chairperson also presented information on the Evidence-Based Program Account, or EBPA. He explained from where the EBPA funds come, which is, it's funded from all of the money that is saved from closing the, oh, I'm blanking on it and I didn't write it down, shame on me. From closing, I'm going to turn to my colleagues at the table to see if they can get that. It's the YRCs, thank you, the Youth Residential Centers with the 2016 Senate Bill 367. So all the money that was saved by closing those, that's what funds the Evidence-Based Program Account. And those funds are disseminated in the form of grants to counties that, or any municipality that applies for them. He also spoke on the JGOC's role in those grants, which is simply a recommendation process to the KDOC that these are the grants we think should move forward. Further, he talked about the projections for this account, which do predict a negative balance in the coming years. Finally, he discussed information on the crossover youth practice model, which launched in Kansas in 2020. He just presented a broad overview of this model and explained that it's been implemented in 3 counties so far, and 3 additional counties have been identified for implementation in 2026. They're trying a slow rollout and gradually putting it in more instead of a whole statewide approach. In response to questions from committee members, he stated the preference of the JJOC would be for the funds in that evidence-based practice account to not go to any other sources and that it continue to be protected, and that the definition of the evidence-based program account is actually very limited on how the funds may be expended. And so if the legislature is interested in using it in other ways to benefit juveniles, the definition is where that needs to be modified. Next, the committee heard from the Kansas Sentencing Commission. The executive director of the Kansas Sentencing Commission presented information on that annual report and the prison projection populations, and an update on the 2003 Senate Bill 123 Substance Use Treatment Program. In response to questions, the director stated that the substance use treatment programs are provided at no cost to most offenders. At the discretion of the judge, they may choose to have it go through the offender's insurance if they have it. The commission is undergoing a comprehensive review of the sentencing grid, and they are considering how much weight to put on an offender's criminal history. And that increasing penalties is not a deterrent for crimes in relation to the prison bed space impact. Further, on this day, the committee had an informational hearing on provisions known as the Second Look Act, colloquially. These provisions can be found in 2025 Senate Bill 255, but this was an informational hearing on just the provisions in general. An assistant reviser of statutes provided a summary of the bill provisions, stating the bill would allow certain offenders to petition a court to conduct a resentencing hearing. These are offenders that are incarcerated. In response to questions from the committee, and the assistant reviser explained that any resentencing is up to the discretion of the judge hearing the reapplication or the application for resentencing. For the prison bed impact, the executive director of the Sentencing Commission presented an updated prison bed impact statement for Senate Bill 255, as this is the closest that we had to hear these provisions. And he described that there were a number of assumptions that had to be made in this prison bed impact, but it did have a negative bed impact in that if these resentencing were allowed people to be released, then there would be fewer people in the prisons, and therefore they would have a negative bed space impact. And then finally, the committee heard from some stakeholders and heard stakeholder input. And these stakeholders generally stated who they were or who they were speaking about was not the person they were when they committed the offense. And after a number of years, they feel that having an opportunity to restate their case is something that they would like to have. And then finally, to close out this first very busy day, was a presentation on assistance for reentry services and expungement. The executive director for Kansas Legal Services presented information on expungement clinics that the Kansas Legal Services has hosted across the state, and he shared statistics relating to the impact that these clinics have had, the stories of some specific individuals, and then he further shared their budget requests for fiscal year 27. So that closed out the November 6th meeting. On November 7th, the committee heard bulk from the Department of Corrections. Actually, before I continue, Mr. Chair, would you like for me to pause for questions on November 6th, or shall I carry on?
No, you can finish, and we'll ask questions at the end.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Secretary of Corrections presented the annual update on the Department of Corrections. He covered a vast array of topics, including the budget, allocations, staffing population projections, parole, community corrections funding, education and employment. He covered a lot. Some things specifically, Sex Offender Program Management and Placement, the Sex Predator Commitment Act, and then specifically also the replacement of the Hutchinson Correctional Facility. In response to questions, there were some things that the secretary did expound on. In fiscal year '26, there was an increase of $102 million in healthcare expenditures to cover the gap necessary in healthcare costs. This is because the contract that was accepted in the request for proposal was severely underbid, and they needed more money to cover it all. And it's anticipated that that is only going to continue to rise. The evidence-based practice account looks artificially high at this present moment because every year the grantees return the funds that they haven't spent, and then they may get them back and then be able to continue to use them. So like the picture at a glance is somewhat artificial sometimes. The Department of Corrections does partner with law enforcement as much as they can to prevent contraband from entering facilities. The biggest problem that they're running into, he expressed, is the cell phones that make their way into facilities. However, he shared that the Federal Communications Commission was considering allowing mobile networks to jam cell phones in prisons, which he expressed would be a significant step in preventing that contraband, should that be allowed to happen. In the future, they are interested and may partner with drone detection technology of contraband, but right now the cost of entry is far too high. He said that $1 million would get drone detection, would get the ability to detect drones, but not any kind of interception. And then as the legislature is continuing to consider where to construct or expand new facilities as the legislature continues to see the prison bed impact and the population projections, it must be kept in mind staffing. Hutchinson is, for whatever reason, I don't recall him expounding on it, but Hutchinson generally has really good staffing levels, and which makes it a key place for more for renovation, replacement, whatever the decision is. While there might be other places, you have to keep in mind, can those beds be staffed if you build the beds there? And then, after the secretary was finished, the committee heard from the Deputy Secretary of Juvenile and Adult Community-Based Services, who presented an annual update on the Juvenile Correctional Complex, Juvenile Community-Based Services, and Adult Community-Based Services. And then finally, the committee heard an informational briefing on 2025-2329. This is the bill that this committee passed out last year. A senior assistant reviser of statutes presented a summary of the bill, stating that the bill would increase detention length and criminal penalties for juveniles who used a firearm in the commission of an offense, and would increase placement options of juveniles in youth residential facilities. The committee heard from several stakeholders regarding 2025-2329, including representatives of Southeast Kansas Regional Juvenile Detention Center, Ember Hope, Kansas Association of Chiefs of Police, Kansas Peace Officers Association, and Kansas Sheriff's Association, and the Riley County Police Department. The committee also received written-only testimony from a representative of Compass Behavioral Health. The stakeholders shared their perspectives on the bill, generally speaking positively to the provisions that the bill contained. At the conclusion of the presentations on November 7th, the committee held discussion over the content of the previous 2 days. And following the discussion, the committee made the following recommendation: that the committee supports Kansas Legal Services in its efforts to conduct expungement clinics and driver's license clinics, and that it does convey that support to the House Committee on General Government Budget. And with that, Mr. Chair, I would be delighted to stand for questions.
Open for questions. Anyone? Yes, Representative Brooklyn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. You mentioned that there's the healthcare piece of it, that they underbid the contract, and now there is a need for additional funds to fill the gap. Did the secretary discuss like some of the major drivers of that increased cost?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative, not to my immediate recollection, but I'd be happy to go back and watch the clip and get back to you.
Awesome, thank you.
Representative Smith.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. You talked about resentencing. If a person is resentenced, would you require a different judge?
Yes, you may answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative, if you're referring to the provisions in the Second Look Act, I don't specifically recall if the Second Look Act specified which judge would be hearing it, or if it was going to go to a special court, or what that circumstance would be. That would be something that would either be handled in the bill, or if it wasn't, that would come up in that circumstance and be addressed at that time.
And
Go ahead.
And on drug rehab, you know, maybe if a inmate needs drug rehab and he doesn't have any money, does the state pay for his rehab at a different facility?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Smith. The funding sources for the Senate Bill 123 program I know are specified, the Senate Bill 123 being the Substance Abuse Treatment Program. I know those are detailed and specified. I can follow up and get back to you on that. And then in terms of for incarcerated persons also, I'll follow up with Nicole Hrencher, who's our fiscal analyst, who has the Department of Corrections budget, and I'll get that information for you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Representative Martinez?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. You said there was funding, money saved from SB 367, and that a lot of that money, well, some of that went to evidence-based programs, but there's a cap on it now. Is that what you said?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kind of. So the money that was saved by closing the youth residential centers, which was a sort of holding place for juveniles. That is the money that funds the evidence-based programs account. And the evidence-based programs account is used for grants for specified purposes. And there was for some time kind of a holdup in getting the grants out. And so there have been a couple of amendments to that statute to make it easier. And the Juvenile Justice Oversight Committee last year or the year before just started more of a rolling grant system. And so the funds are getting to where they need to go more quickly. And so that is what's getting the funds like out to where it's going. So it's not necessarily that there is a cap, but it is predicting a negative balance. And there was part of an aspect of it that was I forget the terms, and forgive me, I'm not a fiscal analyst. There was like money that was in all of the accounts that just got blanket pulled out last year, and not all of it got put back in at some point in the process. I can follow up on what that's called and specifically what it was, but that took a ding out of the account, and that contributed to it. And I can follow up and get exactly what that was because I'm not remembering the numbers, but I remember the process and it happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Representative Ressman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to go back to the health expenditures. There's a shortfall of $102 million. How can a vendor, and you might not even know the answer to this, how can a vendor underbids by such a great amount of money? Was there an explanation on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair. That's a really great question. I'm going to review that part of the clip anyway. I'd be happy to send you the timestamp to see what the Secretary has to say, but otherwise I'll defer to the agency, and I'm happy to pass the question along.
Well, I hate to see what it's going to look like in 27. They're already $102 million. The other thing, too, was there any other discussion? I wasn't there. I was somewhere else. Was there a discussion on any other vendor coming in, or if there was a fix to this problem? Do you remember?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Vice Chair, a fix, not necessarily, but they will have to issue new contracts. And so the Secretary did say he anticipates the contracts across the board just starting higher. I recall that.
I would just add that I believe they're currently in the process of taking bids for a new contract. And so, I'm just thinking out loud here. I mean, that's something that the committee could also look into. We might want to have a hearing to learn more about that process and what's going on. It's a good idea. So thank you for the questions. I'll pursue that. Representative Mosley.
This is a quick question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. When you said that the Second Look Act would cause negative impact on beds, that means that you need less beds or more beds? I just want to make sure that I'm understanding the words.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Representative. Yes, if the Second Look Act, or as it is in Senate Bill 2025, Senate Bill 255, it would result in fewer beds.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I was under, because I just want to make sure I was understanding that correctly. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Seeing no more questions, we'll be close this part of the hearing today. Thank you. All right, so we're not having any a meeting tomorrow or Friday. Monday is Martin Luther King Day. So we'll see everybody back here on Tuesday. You do? So, thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah. I'm giving you Martin Luther